were turning it over, or were you just like thinking like I'm making money hand over fist, and this is never going to end?
Yeah, well, the thing that was different about me, I was a kid. I started doing this. I started getting into the game. Around 15. And I started getting serious about selling like around 17. So I mean, really, when you're a kid, I mean, at my height, and I didn't have a really, I was doing it for a long time, but I only had maybe 9 months when I was like about, the age of 20, like around 1990 into 1991, right before my case, where I was actually, kind of getting more business, like, and I was probably making, like 20, 25 grand a month. But before then, there's more little stuff I was kind of building, but during that 9 months I had like in mind, I would set money aside. I had it in my mind. I wanted to become like a cash millionaire. I figured, at the age of 20, if I kept doing what I was doing, I was like, man, by the time of 25, I'm gonna be a cash millionaire. And I knew lots of dudes that were older than me that sold weed and LSD and mushrooms, and they never really got busted because I was out in the suburbs. I was in the colleges. So I never thought, that I was going to get busted. I saw, when they started bringing in those mandatory minimums and federal sentencing guidelines, I was like into the 80s. So I remember that, but they were just targeting like the African Americans in the inner city. They weren't targeting like white kids out in the suburbs. So when they actually came and got me like in 91 and got my case, it was like a surprise to me because I didn't ever think I was going to get caught, so that was like my whole thing. I was like, I'm going to be a cash millionaire by the time I was 25, and obviously, it didn't happen, but, I probably, my own money, I would say I never had more than, I don't know, maybe 130 grand, like my own money. I had more money, because I used to get a lot of stuff on front. So I might have had a couple 100,000, but, half of it might be, my Connex money.
Yeah. Oh, good.
No, I was just, and weed was a class A drug back then. It was the same thing as heroin or cocaine. Weed was
right? Still is with the feds. It still is with the feds. It's still Schedule 1. Yeah, with the feds have not decriminalized. The feds, it's still Schedule 1. Marijuana is Schedule 1. Cocaine is Schedule 2 with the feds. It's been the same. Wow. So I mean, there's a lot of changes in the states.
Let me ask you. Do you know, going deeper, are the states relieving some of the sentences that they had upheld maybe 20 years ago? Let's say a guy's still in prison now. Are they looking at those cases now?
No, people are getting out. Look, I'm going to show you something, bro. I'm going to show you something.
Oh, what? Wow.
This is a that's a non-violent weed case. So look, I got popped about 3 years ago. Luckily, I was off Fed paper. I got popped with like 50 pounds, right?
Jesus.
And first plea, right? They offered me, because I'm an ex-con. I did 21 years in the feds, right? So, and this is Missouri. So they came to me. They offered me 10-year plea. I was like, man, fuck you. This was right when the medical marijuana was like happening here, like 3 years ago, right? So I actually got a medical marijuana license. I was a cultivator. I was fighting this case, right, for 50 pounds in the state. And I had like 54 plants growing in my basement legally, right? So look, they came to me, the prosecutors come to me. They offered me 10 years. And I'm like, even 10 years in the state, so it may have been 4 years. But I'm like, fuck you, man. It's like, I'm like, weed is legal. So whatever. So they sat, whatever. My lawyer talked to them or whatever, because I had a negotiator lawyer at first. Then boom, they come back like 6 months later, because the state is different than the feds. The state can take like 2-3 years to go through it, where the feds is like 6 months. The feds like get you quick. Yeah. Even if you go to trial, it's not going to be over 9 months or a year with the feds. Correct. So then they come back to me like 6 months later. They're like, okay, we'll give you five-year plea. And I might have had to do like 18 months. But I was like, man, fuck that. I'm not doing any time for weed. Weed is legal. I'm growing. I got 54 plants in my basement, and you're trying to give me time, So then my negotiator, he like was negotiated out. That's a lot of people don't understand. There's two types of lawyers too. You got negotiators, and then you got trial lawyers.
Though, what happens is, as a bluff, some people actually hire a trial lawyer with the perception that they're willing to go to trial, and they don't want that. The state doesn't want that. So when you send a negotiator in, although these guys and gals are professionals and they'll do a good job, they're like, okay, he sent in a negotiator. He's he's worried about blowing trial, and that's just one of the, or you know, you get what I'm saying, like he did it as a tactic, but so what happened? So they're kind of negotiating.
Yeah, no. So then my negotiator, he's like, "This is the best I can do." I'm like, "Nah, man." I'm like, "I'm not doing that." I'm like, "I'm not going to jail for weed." And it was just like,
yeah,
you know,
30
whatever,
grand
like 2019. I'm like, "I'm not going to jail for weed," right? So I fire him. And I go and I get this trial lawyer in St. Charles County, Missouri. I get this guy, Dennis Chassenal. He's known for fighting, like all the dudes in prison, and like they say, this dude fights.
Yeah.
So so I hire this dude. Boom, he wants 20 grand, right? And I tell him, I go, okay, look, I go, I'm ready. Let's go to trial. I go, I'm not taking it. I go, believe there's problems with the warrant. I go, because they fudged the warrant, they lied on the warrant, they exaggerated my criminal history, right? They just a lot of stuff, right? Because really, when they came in, it was one of these multi-jurisdictional task forces, right, in Missouri, and they came in and they thought I was under, because the informant told them I was still on Fed probation. The informant told them I had guns. The informants told them I had bullets. And the informants told them I had money. And the informant actually dropped the weed off when they came in like 3 hours later, right? So they came in, all they found is the weed that the informant left, right? So they don't got nothing. They got no guns. They got no money. They got no bullets. And I'm not on Fed parole. So the informant just lied to get out of it, which a lot of informants, that's what they do. They lie their asses off to put